Well, new data from the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy Canada shows a jump in consumers trying to restructure their debts. Consumer proposals rose to the highest monthly level in more than a decade in March, and total insolvencies, including bankruptcies, jumped to the highest since 2019. For more on this, let's bring in Doug Hoyes, co-founder of Hoyes, Michalos Associates. Doug, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jacqueline.
So what are you seeing on the ground? Does that sort of data reflect what you're seeing, a rise in consumer proposals and even in bankruptcies?
Yes, absolutely. The number of bankruptcies as a percentage is falling, but consumer proposals are going up. In fact, I took a look at the stats, and this was a record month forever. We've never had a consumer proposal filing total in Canada higher than 9,000. There was only 1 month in history back in October 2019 when it was over 8,000. So this is a massive jump, and absolutely, we're seeing this across the board at the moment.
So what is really driving this, Doug? Does part of this come down to, a sort of quiet period during the pandemic when people were maybe getting CERB or, able to save money in some ways when, in order to get through that period?
Yes, absolutely. If you look at the trend line starting in 2018 and join it up to where it is now, well, it's an uptrend line. But during the period of 2020, 2021 into 2022, the courts were closed. People weren't working, so people weren't being sued. Their wages weren't being garnished, so they didn't need to seek protection from their creditors in the form of a consumer proposal. It's kind of like holding a balloon underwater. Well, you can do it for a while, but eventually, boom, it's popping up, and that's where we are now. So it's not so much a new trend as opposed to a continuation of a trend that was interrupted starting in 2020.
How much are you hearing from small business owners, Doug, who were, who made it through the pandemic, but thanks to perhaps some COVID emergency loans? Because we heard from the CFIB this week talking about how many small businesses in this country would like to have more time to pay those emergency loans back because business just hasn't enabled them to put more money towards their debt just yet. Do you hear from some, small business owners who have taken on personal debt as well to get through the pandemic?
Yes, absolutely. And I hear from a lot of people who got CEBA loans, again, small businesses. Now, the CEBA loans aren't due and payable until the end of this year. But I'm getting a lot of calls from people saying, hey, my business closed down. There's no way I'm going to be able to pay it back. What do I do? So those numbers are not reflected in these statistics yet. That's going to be the story for next year when those loans do become payable and the business people aren't able to pay them. That's certainly going to cause a spike. But yes, absolutely, they also took on a lot of personal debt. And if their businesses haven't snapped back and they aren't able to repay it, then we're absolutely getting a lot of calls from those kind of people as well.
What would you say to somebody who is in that position where they have that government loan to pay off, the CEBA loan to pay off, but their business is shut down?
Well, if the CEBA loan was made to a corporation, then based on the documents I've reviewed, the owner of the corporation is not personally liable for it. So if the corporation no longer exists, that's it. But if you got the loan personally because you were a sole proprietor, then there's going to have to be some kind of arrangements made. That's something we'll see as we get closer to the payment deadline. I don't know if the government is going to offer special repayment terms or what's going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty about it right now.
When it comes to demographics, Doug, who are you hearing from the most?
Well, we're hearing from all age groups, but millennials have been the biggest one that we've been hearing from certainly over the last year or two. They were, I think, disproportionately impacted by the lockdowns. They might not have been senior enough at work to avoid being laid off or to be able to work remotely. Often they would work 1 or 2 different jobs. They had retail jobs, that sort of thing that were impacted. So they are certainly the largest growing cohort of what we're seeing today.
When you think about, the next year or so, Doug, and, the end of this quiet period, whether it was courts or because people were getting some COVID support, what are you expecting? Could there be, quite a wave of insolvencies to come?
Yes, I think when the results for the month of April are released, and we're talking about March, they'll probably be a little bit lower because April was a shorter month. There weren't as many business days. But I think once we see the numbers for May, June, July, they're going to be absolutely up. And we still haven't had the full impact of all the tax debt. I mean, tax filing season has just ended. Revenue Canada has not increased their collection activities yet. They've just gotten through a strike. There's a backlog there. So that's another pressure point. And then, of course, interest rates are a lot higher. So if you have debt, the cost of carrying that debt is also higher. Everything takes time, though. Interest rates don't go up on Monday and everyone's filing a consumer proposal on Tuesday. There can be a time lag anywhere between 6 to 18 months. So yes, I expect the wave to continue over certainly the balance of this year and into next.
When is the best time for someone who is feeling overwhelmed, financially squeezed, to be seeking out assistance and trying to figure out how to strategize and what to do next before things get to a point where you are insolvent or need to go through bankruptcy?
Yeah, our advice, of course, is to talk to a licensed trustee, licensed insolvency trustee immediately. Debt problems don't go away. Interest compounds and gets worse and worse and worse. So unless you think your situation is going to dramatically improve tomorrow, then the time to reach out for help is now. A licensed insolvency trustee is required to provide a no-charge initial consultation. So there's no cost, there's no obligation to talking to someone, and maybe you can work it out on your own. Fantastic, then you know. But absolutely better to reach out. Debt problems only get worse if you ignore them.